Hello, everyone, and welcome to another deep dive on the Explainer. Today, we're taking an absolutely massive journey across the subcontinent to analyze India's longest and arguably most geographically significant river system, the Ganga. We're going to be following the water literally every step of the way, mapping its course, its major divisions, and that vast, interconnected network of tributaries that keeps the whole thing alive. So, let's get right to it.
Here is our quick roadmap for today's journey. First up, Dev-Prayag and the origin of the Ganga. Then, we'll trace its plains journey and the states it crosses. After that, we'll look at the Farakka division and the Sundarbans. And finally, we'll wrap up with the major tributaries of the Ganga.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Dev-Prayag and the origin of the Ganga.
2,525 kilometers. That staggering distance officially makes the Ganga the longest river in India. It's a number that really dictates the entire scale of the geography we're exploring today, carving a literal lifeline right through the heart of the subcontinent. To put that into perspective, you're looking at a hydrological system that's roughly equivalent to driving across the entire length of Western Europe. It's just a massive, dynamic force of nature that actively supports hundreds of millions of people.
Okay, let's dive into exactly how this river forms, because it doesn't just spring out of the ground fully formed. It's actually the result of a really powerful convergence up in Uttarakhand. Step 1 begins with the Bhagirathi River, which is fed directly by the intense glacial meltwater of the Gangotri Glacier as it just rushes down these steep valleys. Step 2 brings us the Alaknanda River, carrying its own immense volume from the Satopanth Glacier. And step 3, well, that's where the magic happens. These two distinct, really violent mountain rivers crash together at a specific town called Dev-Prayag. And it is only after these two churning forces meet at this exact confluence that the waters officially take on the name, the Ganga.
So, once it's officially formed, the river begins this rapid descent until it hits a pretty critical geographical milestone, Haridwar. This is where the landscape just fundamentally shifts. The Ganga bursts out of the steep, rocky, high-energy confines of the Himalayas and spills right out into the vast, flat terrain of the Indo-Gangetic Plains. And this sudden transition drastically slows the water's momentum. It allows the river to widen out, meander, and really start depositing the rich, fertile silt that it carved out of the mountains. That's a process that makes these northern plains some of the most agriculturally vital and densely populated lands on Earth.
Moving right along to Section 2, the plains journey and the states it runs through.
If we trace the river's eastern progression, it reveals what's basically a massive cross-country highway. Starting high up in Uttarakhand, the water flows directly into Uttar Pradesh. And this is an absolutely crucial phase because Uttar Pradesh actually hosts the longest single stretch of the Ganga's entire journey, which allows it to swell its volume significantly as it absorbs a bunch of smaller streams. After navigating that immense expanse, the river just continues eastward, cutting a wide, fertile swath straight through Bihar, briefly touching the northern edge of Jharkhand, and finally flowing steadily into West Bengal. This entire sequence forms the river's primary artery, literally shaping the topography and the economies of half a dozen states.
Now for Section 3, the Farakka division and the Sundarbans.
Now, what's really interesting here is what happens next. After traveling for hundreds of kilometers as a single, massive entity, the river reaches Farakka in West Bengal, where it undergoes a really dramatic geographical division. The water essentially splits into two distinct distributary streams. One branch heads off to the south, becoming the Hooghly River. This vital waterway flows right through the bustling metropolis of Coca-Cola before emptying out into the Bay of Bengal. Meanwhile, the main bulk of the water just keeps its eastward momentum going, pushing forward right across the international border into Bangladesh. And once it crosses that line, it officially sheds the name Ganga and becomes known as the Padma River.
But over in Bangladesh, the Padma doesn't just flow quietly to the sea. No way. It actually meets two other monumental forces of nature, the massive Brahmaputra and the Meghna rivers. The combined hydrological force, along with millions upon millions of tons of sediment from these converging giants, creates the Sundarbans Delta. Right before finally falling into the Bay of Bengal, this specific convergence forms the absolute largest river delta in the entire world. It builds this staggering, vast network of tidal waterways, mudflats, and a totally unique mangrove ecosystem that serves as a massive natural shield for the inland areas. Honestly, it's a breathtaking climax to a 2,525-kilometer journey.
Which brings us to our final leg, Section 4, major tributaries of the Ganga. Look, a river this massive only survives because of an immense network of branches feeding into it. If you're floating downstream, you've got distinct rivers joining you from the left bank and the right bank.
Over on the left bank, which mostly carries heavy glacier-fed waters crashing down from the high Himalayas, you have the Ramganga, Gomti, Gagra, Gandak, Kosi, and Mahananda rivers. These are often high volume and, pretty prone to causing floods. Then, on the right bank, bringing water up from the drier peninsular plateaus, you have the Yamuna, the Tones, and the Son rivers. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole system. It creates this massive geographical funnel, drawing water from entirely different topographies, icy mountains in the north and rocky plateaus in the south, all into one central channel.
But out of all those massive contributors, the Yamuna absolutely stands in a league of its own. It is the single largest tributary of the entire Ganga River system. It runs almost completely parallel to the Ganga for hundreds of kilometers before it finally joins up at Prayagraj. Its geographical significance to that right bank flow simply cannot be overstated. It basically acts as a twin river for a huge chunk of its upper journey. In fact, the Yamuna is so huge that it operates almost like a primary river itself, complete with its own complex network of feeder rivers long before it ever even reaches the Ganga. Major subtributaries like the Chambal, the Sindh, the Betwa, and the Ken rivers all feed into the Yamuna. It's kind of like a giant puzzle of watersheds nested inside one another, right? These 4 rivers drain the central highlands to feed the Yamuna, and then the Yamuna, in turn, funnels all that collected water directly into the Ganga.
So what does this all mean? How does understanding this vast, interconnected network, from the icy peaks of Devprayag all the way down to the world's largest delta in the Sundarbans, fundamentally change the way we view the survival of our natural landscapes? Well, when you realize that the water flowing into the Bay of Bengal carries the combined historical flow of the Bhagirathi, the Yamuna, the Brahmaputra, and dozens of others, you really start to see how deeply connected everything is. A change in one tiny remote mountain stream can literally cascade through an entire subcontinent, altering sediment, agriculture, and whole ecosystems thousands of kilometers away. It's a lot to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.